Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're doing really well. It's Monday. It's the start of a new week. Another week closer to Christmas, which is never a bad thing. And especially after a weekend where Chelsea got the 3 points. This is the return of Added Time, my old Q&A show. I really enjoyed doing this, especially during the lockdown period when I started it, and it really grew the channel and the show and the community, and I want to bring it back, especially as we head into 2025. So if you do want to engage with this, I'll be asking for questions on Blue Sky, where I'm very active at the moment. Great to see a building Chelsea community there that I think is very healthy and productive to have conversations about the club. So we got some questions from there, also from my YouTube comments in recent weeks. So we'll delve into a lot today because there's some interesting topics that we haven't discussed in recent days. Please do hit that like button if you're enjoying the content, subscribe, turn those notifications on. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you for tuning in. Please do give us a positive rating review. Really helps get the show to more Chelsea fans as we head towards a crazy busy festive period. I have to say, just looking, I was planning out some of the content we've got coming up, and man, it is a busy time with so many games, especially with now Premier League midweek games coming in as well. Let's jump into the questions. Firstly, here from Chris Riley, who asks, any thought on the possibility of future rebranding? Already seeing lots of London on merchandise and socials. Does that eventually go as far as a badge change like Spurs or Juventus? Maybe just a line. Think it's limited in the buyout contract, but longer term. So I think there is a kind of an emotional, gut, visceral reaction that I think for a lot of people will create opposition to this. I have noticed it as well. If you walk around Stamford Bridge, it's funny that usually on a lot of the lampposts around Stamford Bridge, they usually would have players. I sort of jokingly have said with people I go to the bridge with, they've changed them now to just have like the badge, the lion and London, because we sell so many players each year. There's no point in putting players up there because they'll be gone within 12 months. But I've seen a lot of this, and I know Chelsea apparently have acquired certain things in terms of like copyright to produce probably merch and other stuff and try and make more money on it. I'm not as opposed specifically to the lion on the badge for this shirt being more present and that kind of being the next evolution of the Chelsea badge. I'm actually not that against that being the future. Whether it turns into the nightmare situation of LDN becoming a bigger thing, and I understand, listen, from a banter point of view, people like to say, yeah, we're the biggest club in London. You want to have it against your rivals in London, but Chelsea should still be Chelsea. And Chelsea LDN just feels too franchise for me. It feels like MK Dons, but we'll see how it goes. I think for now it's fine. Listen, Chelsea and every other club in the Premier League do these kind of quirks and branding exercises for stuff that I think goes over the heads of most supporters. Chelsea is Chelsea. I think it always will be, and especially given the power, I think, of the supporters' trust and, you know, fan groups who I think would respond negatively if it went anything beyond just kind of like branding on stuff that isn't the main kit and mainly what people are going to be wearing week in, week out. So those are my thoughts. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Vu asks, Daniel, which player do you think is most nailed or will start most games in the left wing for Chelsea for the remainder of this season, barring injuries? That's a really interesting question because I think there's a reason why all three, I guess, of the contenders or obvious contenders, Pedro Neto, Jadon Sancho and Mykhailo Mudryk, right? Because, I mean, for me, I think instinctively the answer to that, in my opinion, is Pedro Neto. I think Neto is already proving to be one of Chelsea's best signings from the summer just because he's Premier League quality. I think he's proven. He also has a bit of versatility to him where he can play off both flanks, which arguably Sancho can as well. Mudryk, I think, definitely can't. And I think Mudryk definitely is the third choice there. On the weekend, we saw Joao Felix start on the left. I don't think that will be a regular position for him personally. I think now Sancho's back, that's going to kind of be the instant kind of replacement if Neto isn't available. But I just love the speed and directness and output of Pedro Neto. I think Neto, if he can remain fit, which has been a problem for him in his career, not so far at Chelsea, touch wood. I know obviously he got a knock during the international break, but hopefully he'll be back sooner for games in the Conference League and also the Premier League. I think he will be the one, simply because I think he's showing a directness. He has an output. I think he has a ferocity to him that means he's going to be playing a lot of games. Sancho, I think, needs to return to what he did at the start of his Chelsea career, where he's a lot more direct, a lot more simple with what he's doing, and I think he maybe, just maybe, could be that. But I'll go for Pedro Neto for now, which I think if you were to put it out for a poll, I think most people would say Pedro Neto naturally at the moment. Jam asks, great guy Jam, definitely go and follow him. Which players are you worried about? There are a couple. There's the obvious ones like Robert Sanchez, who I've been worried about for a long period of time. Axel Disasi, players like that. I think B-team players who I just can't really see a great development for. I think those are the players I worry about, really, or worry, can they grow beyond what they are at Chelsea currently? And I think that's the problem, and that's why the squad is maybe a little bit more flawed than people like to say, and will be warped a lot this season by the Conference League, because Chelsea are playing such weak opposition in that competition that it doesn't really matter how flawed certain areas are. Chelsea, like against Noah, it doesn't matter. Chelsea are going to win those games. We're not going to be exposed. The problem, I think, will be exposed if Chelsea get back in the Champions League, where you do need a severe depth and you do need players who are compensated and can kind of come in and be a decent, adequate, level comparing to the first choice. So I would say players like that. I'm still worried about players like Enzo Fernandez. I think, Enzo needs to be a lot more consistent. But listen, it's great to be sat here after a weekend where he had his best performance of the season so far. I need to see more of it. Mudryk, I think, is still got a lot of flaws, and I still think there's a likelihood he won't succeed at Chelsea. I just personally feel that. So yeah, I'll go with those couple of players. It's kind of difficult to say worried, because there's certain players, unfortunately, I've kind of made judgments on, and I think it's kind of difficult for me to see how that radically changes. Calvin asks, Chelsea is supposed to be interested in Ousmane Diomande as a centre-back. Have you seen him play as on a consistent basis? If so, is he a good defender? And by that, I don't mean carrying the ball forward and passing. I'm referring to whether or not he reads the game well defensively and instinctively gets himself in proper position to tackle and doesn't go to ground often. I can't say, I'd be lying if I say I'm an expert on Diomande. I've heard his name a number of times, obviously playing for Sporting Lisbon, which is, me and Jay spoke about this. I think the Portuguese league is not the greatest level, but he has played Champions League football, and I think is someone that probably will. I won't be surprised if Diomande is one of those names who will get a decent level move in the next couple of years, just based on the fact I've seen his name consistently linked to bigger clubs. And you just naturally think with the football economy, he will get his move. I do think the broader conversation about a centre-back is still relevant. I'm going to do a show on Chelsea's defensive issues because they have been prevalent this season. They were even evident in the late stages of the Leicester game, which is a pretty comfortable one defensively for Chelsea. And whether Chelsea need a new centre-back, I would argue yes. It's a bit like the striker one, right? Because do you think we need a dominant centre-back in the sense of someone who's going to come in and start every single game? Or you look at the backup options and think that's where the problem is. We actually need better rotational options. Whether you're able to get that in January, I'm not entirely sure. But it's one to definitely watch. And given some of the defensive lapses we've had, I think there will be a lot of people who feel there may be an opportunity to buy someone a lot more substantial. And that could radically transform statistically, I think, a bit of a weak area for Chelsea. And lastly, this is responding to a comment to my grading video I did last week. So I did a show looking at all the Chelsea players so far, giving them a grading, kind of a classic school grading, A to F. And some people sort of disagreed with certain ones, and Danny NYC95 here said, I still can't get over the fact that you rated Colwill, we were just speaking about centre-backs, and Vega higher than Cucurella. Colwill has been so error-prone this season. He's been good at keeping the attackers onside when his teammates have all moved up, and he did that again for the Leicester penalty. Cucurella has been one of our best and most consistent players every time he steps on the pitch, but that still goes unnoticed, and another top performance from him again today. I think that you've got to factor in that Cucurella has been a part of a defence that at times has had some dodgy moments. Not all the time. He did briefly go out the first team, if I remember rightly, before the last international break, but he came back into it. Listen, I'm happy to be wrong on that. And listen, if Cucurella was brilliant at the weekend, I probably didn't express it enough in my post-match review, which is a reaction that happens shortly after the game. When I went back and watched the game on Match of the Day and watched it a little bit more after that, Cucurella's movement, his involvement, especially in the second goal, obviously, but he gave such a torrid time to Leicester, especially the width that Chelsea were able to get with that back three system. I think I even expressed this during the grading, that I think it's a great thing that I believe I specifically said, just take away the grading, I specifically said in that review of all the players that I think it's a wonderful thing that Cucurella is now just a very trusted and consistent player. I think B is a good rating for him. I think the reason I believe I gave Vega a B plus and probably Colwell an A. I think Colwell, I spoke about this earlier in the season, I think from a passing point of view has been quite an instrumental player for Chelsea. I still think that's the fact. Now, I do agree with you that the offside problem, that you could lay the blame at Colwell, but I think is a more structural problem that we're going to go into later this week. He's been at fault of that, so maybe that knocks down the mark in your opinion. I think he has been the dominant Chelsea centre-back so far. I do think he's been the better defender of the first choices. Cucurella has been very consistent. I want him starting a majority of games and I have no problem admitting that. Vega, it's because Vega, it's also what the context of that player arriving is. And I think Vega has been a very useful rotational option for Chelsea. I think in a number of cases, yes, in the Conference League game, he scores against Ghent, but I think overall we've seen him play at centre-back and had some good moments. We saw him come off the bench in certain games. I think the Brighton one was a really good one where Chelsea had been quite chaotic and really struggled to defend against Brighton in the first half, and Maresca wanted to shore things up in that second half, and I think Vega came on and did that brilliantly. He has a bit of tenacity to him. I think he has become a little bit bigger and a little bit more not instrumental, that's too strong, but I think a little bit more impressive in terms of what people expected him to be when we signed him for like only 16 million. I think he very well could have been deemed another Amari Kellerman, another player bought in, not really in sort of the intention of making him a better first team player. Really just, is it another accounting exercise? Actually, Vega already looks like a very decent, competent squad player that might in his career progress into something more, which is why I think based on what I've seen from him so far, I think he's adjusted to the league well. Marc Cucurella is one of Chelsea's most consistent players. So listen, if we're going to move a B to a B plus to an A, I'm happy to give Cucurella his flowers. I think he has been a brilliant player for Chelsea over the past, however long it is, 6 months, right? If we take it back to the end of last season, and that was demonstrated by the songs that were being chanted at him, the support that was given to him post Leicester. That was a lovely moment, and it shows the transformation of that player. You know, definitely in terms of the way I spoke about this in my Cucurella Saka video that I did during the international break. He's become a lot better at judging when to be more intense as a defender, when he goes really touch tight with people. And from a progressive point of view, you see the comfort he has on the ball. So listen, it's not the end of the world for me. It's a grading. And listen, by the end of the season, I think if he continues on the same path, I will be grading Cucurella an A or maybe even more. So that's my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. So that is it for today's Q&A. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Definitely interact on Blue Sky if you aren't on there already. I definitely suggest if you're tired of toxicity on Twitter and you want to abandon it and you're looking for something better, I'm not being paid by Blue Sky. This is just, it's been so refreshing to go to a platform and actually engage with it and not be abused when you just give an opinion and actually engage with people honestly in good faith. So I definitely suggest going on there, because I will request questions on there. I probably will on my community page as well. So stay tuned for that, as well as the other socials. Follow me across them at SonOfChelsea. Have a great rest of your day wherever you're watching or listening to this, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.